So, without further ado, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce This is another in a series of live broadcasts enjoying the creative sounds of music and harmony. Hope you enjoy. Don't touch that dial. Keep it locked. Tuned in and turned on.
Welcome to the Talk Dirty to Me podcast with the Maestro. Not just numbers, not just stats. It's about what they mean. And now, your host, the Maestro.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Talk Dirty to Me podcast. Who your boy? Me, the Maestro. Let's go and hop into it. Had a chance to check out a run this past weekend in Tacoma, Washington. Beautiful area of the country. One of my favorite teammates and then coaches came from that area. It's nice to see what's happening up there. Learned a lot about some of the players coming into the league, but more importantly, I think for what I'm doing right now, I learned a lot about me. Those of you who have followed me, those of you who know how I go about my business, I never give opinions without having some sort of information to back it up. I never give any thoughts about something without having some kind of data. This is what I use to derive my decision. And that hit me really hard this weekend because I'm going to do something you all have rarely heard me do over this last season. Sometimes I will make comparisons out of reference and I will explain why. But this time I'm going to make a comparison not just out of reference, but out of I really believe in what I saw despite the limited sample size because of how this player went about their business. One of my favorite players in the league, as many of you know, I have a lot. But one of my favorite players is the chairman of the board of my Dirty squad, and that is Trey Hyman. Well, I had a chance to see someone this weekend who every time I watched him move, every time I watched him react, every time I watched him get into a play, I just kept seeing, wow, that looks like Trey. Wow, that looks like Trey. And not to be disrespectful by calling him by his first name, Trey Hyman, but that's what I was seeing. And that player was Damian Luffy, out of Washington, 6'6", 170 pounds, 16 years old, showed me a lot about the one thing that I think is very difficult to coach, and that is IQ. He brought the effort for the run. He brought a lot of the things I'm going to get into his game and specifics here in a minute, but how he utilized his tool set, with some really nice white pants, by the way, showed me a lot about his basketball IQ. Yes, currently he's 13th in the Pacific region recruit rankings. I can only imagine what that's going to mean in terms of what's coming out of that particular region. Again, I talked about the whole Tacoma, Washington thing, right? To see that if this kid is 13, man, what's happening above him? What's happening around him? The first thing I noticed about Damian Luffy was his ability to utilize space. You guys know I say that a lot. Space and leverage. Those are Maestro's things. But he did it in a game in which they're playing 3-on-3, which means every time he passed or every time he received the ball, he was always in a position to act or move with intention for the play or for his teammates. That's classic and difficult to do in a open court situation because you can get too far. There's a fine line between if I pass you the ball at the top of the key and I decide to move cross court, do I cross between you and your man? Or do I cross behind your man? Do I cross with the intention of flashing to the rim? He made the choice every single time, with the exception of maybe two. He had an option that he could have gone to the rim, gone to the corner, and he would have been open either way. And it seemed to me from what I saw, again, limited sample size, he made the right decision every single time. Solid shot, very good ability to move on the ball, as well as what I just talked about when moving off the ball. And his awareness of space. Now, we'll get into this one particular thing in the second half of this episode. Even in 3-on-3, when you get the ball, there is something that a lot of players tend to do. They will dribble themselves into trouble, trying to dribble themselves into a shot. Bad decisions being made. Bad things tend to happen. Putting your team, putting yourself in a bad position. No go. Not good on any level. And that was something I never saw him do. Specifically, as a defensive player with so much floor, the guy he was guarding always had to make a decision pretty quickly. I can't get past him. I need to make a pass and try to move. Now, to the guy he was guarding's credit, he made great decisions as well, realizing I have a guy here who has me on length, who has me on a few things, and let me now understand if I hold the ball any longer, it's just going to be problematic. So I'm going to give a shout out to Daniel Irving. I'm going to talk about him more in another episode, but his ability to make a decision when he was giving up 6 inches to realize where his strength was, where his leverage was, said a lot about his IQ and his character. There was one play in which Luffy was off balance, got caught off balance, and he was made to pay the price. He got drove on, he got dunked on. That's going to happen. Listen, you're not going to win every possession. Doesn't mean you don't try. You're not going to win every possession. You're not going to be in a position to make something count on every possession. But at the very least, you need to do what? You need to make sure that you are putting yourself in a position to win every possession. And if the guy makes a play, the guy makes a play. Simple rule, right? Everybody's out there for a reason. And sometimes you win and sometimes you do not. You're not guaranteed to win every time. Watching Luffy handle himself, again, I kept saying, man, that looks like Trey. Because of what I'm going to say that doesn't show up in the stat line. His hands were always over the ball, whether it was his man with the ball or not. Whenever a shot went up, he made himself present for the rebound. Whenever a ball was passed, he made sure that he was aggravating the lane. Whenever there was a loose ball in the middle of the floor, again, this is 3-on-3, so now keep in mind, we're talking about a pretty open floor space. However, when you have everybody centered around a ball, once it hits the floor, whose hands get there faster? It seemed to always be him. And his ability to take the handle, to flip the play back around, showed that he had an understanding of being able to move to space. He didn't move to the same space every time, gave his teammates an opportunity to move to their spot on the floor. From that position, he would make the decision very quickly again. Quick decisions are important. He'd make the decision to pass or move to the rim. But either way, regardless of what was going on, he never made a decision that put his teammates in any sort of position that they were going to lose leverage on the play. More specifically, never put his teammates in a position where they were going to have to make up for him making a bad decision. So Damian Luffy, if that was my introduction to you, it was a pleasure. And I cannot wait to see how much further you're able to go with your game, to watch you develop. Again, understanding that you're coming into a new league. There are going to be some veterans you're going to run up against. Your skill set's already there. Keep that IQ rising. Keep watching film. Keep doing what you got to do, as I would say to anyone else. But it's going to be great to watch you do your thing as you move forward. Really appreciate it. Coming back on the next half of this episode of Talk Dirty to Me, we're going to talk about that space and time thing as it applies to guard play.
Thank you for listening to the Talk Dirty to Me podcast with the Maestro.
Want to get involved? Bring it. Drop in discord.gg/SimWorld NBA.
If you have the brain,
Join as a coach.
If you have the game, join as a player. See the game, be the game. But now, back to Talk Dirty to Me with the Maestro.
Once again, for the Soul Children's String section of
Let's get back to some wonderful sounds.
And welcome back to the second half of this episode, Talk Dirty to Me. And as promised, let's talk about a couple of points that I'm seeing now as I'm watching some of the pickup games and some of the runs and things like that. So as I was asked a couple of weeks ago, what is it that I am looking for when I look at these games, because I understand more often than not, people are playing with people they've never played with before. They're obviously playing against people they've never played against before, though that really doesn't matter. But probably more importantly, there is no set scheme or set game plan more often than not. What I am looking for here is, how does the player react to their environment? How do they serve what's going on in the basketball environment, which we all know is mega super fluid? Changes from pass to pass, from bounce to bounce. It's a dogfight. If you know old school aerial combat, if you watch Top Gun or Maverick, I'm going to admit I have not. But if you watch those sort of movies or watch planes in the air doing combat, that's what basketball is like. As a matter of fact, I will even tell you this. As a coach, I schemed a lot of my plays on dogfighting principles. So that way, once the play got started, my team knew the rules that I wanted them to follow as they were going forward in accordance to dogfighting rules. And sometimes when I had the opportunity, I would actually bring in pilots who trained in flight combat to sort of talk to my team and talk about that. Even though pilots work in 3 dimensions, basketball, we're only working in 2 dimensions. To me, those principles still gave my team an opportunity to be in a better position in every play, because they weren't set to have to do the same thing every single time, regardless of the play that was called. So let's start that with guard play when you're bringing the ball up. When the guard brings the ball up, whether it's the point guard or the shooting guard or whomever, if you still have the ball with more than 8 seconds or 9 seconds gone in the play clock, 2 things have happened. You have not passed the ball because A, your team was not moving, you did not get in position to give yourself someone to pass it to, or play, or B, a play was not decided, or a principle was not decided to be implemented, or C, and this is the worst part of all, you're just taking the air out the ball and dribbling out the clock and hurting everybody. And that's what I saw quite a bit of. A lot of people bringing up the ball behind the back, between the legs, in front, crossover, making all of your moves while you're standing in one spot. Basically, it's sort of like a beauty contestant who comes out on the stage, stands in one spot, and then walks back off the stage. That's pretty much what you were doing there. There was no movement. There was nothing that was going to get the defense to react to you. With you standing in one spot and doing all that fancy stuff, basically all you were doing was just wasting time. Very important for a guard bringing the ball. And I know I'm saying guard. I'm only saying that in relationship to the person who brings the ball up the floor and then makes the decisions to kick off a play. Because I know, I get it, Maestro. I understand. You don't have to at me. We're in positionless basketball now. That decision of the person bringing the ball up the court, for now we'll call them a guard if you just stay with me, you are key to being the catalyst to what happens next. And either it's going to be with intention and with energy, or it's going to be lazy. And if it is lazy, you have now wasted a possession even before it happens. Yes, you might get lucky and score a bucket, but luck is not a strategy. Yes, you might get lucky and the defense might fall asleep on you. Luck is not a strategy. Waiting for the other team to make a mistake is also not a strategy. You make your strategy with intention and with action. If you're bringing the ball up the floor and you get to the point where you've crossed the midcourt line and you see your team and they're not in motion, they're not in principle, or they're not in the play, ban people, make people move. Call a screen up. Do something to get the defense on their heels. This is not football. The defense is reacting to you. They're not setting up for what they think you're going to do. They are reacting to you, so it's up to you to make that happen. And if you bring the ball up and you're doing all of your Harlem Globetrotters moves while you're standing in one spot, yeah, you look pretty, but that's it. So help out your teammates. Do what you got to do. The other thing with guard play is recognizing how and when, and more importantly, why you need to understand and be clear on what you're asking your teammates to do. And why am I saying it that way? Because the last thing you want to do is put them in a position where they're having to make a decision on something that you need them to do and they've never done it before, which means, like the quarterback, you need to know the limitations the abilities of all those around you. And you also need to know every play. As a matter of fact, everybody should know every play. That's another podcast we're going to talk about. You should know every principle. I might be the center, but I need to know what the power forward is doing in this principle on this play. So I can make that no-look pass if I want to, or if I need relief. I know where to go for the shooting guard or the small forward or whomever else is on the floor. If you do not know other people's responsibilities, you cannot help your team the way you should be able to help them. Coming back to the guards, I'm just going to say this. Anyone, if you're bringing the ball up the floor, look for your teammates. Make the decision early with what you're given. Don't wait for the defense to settle. Get on the attack, or if the defense already has you and you cannot be on the attack, then you need to make them move so you can attack. Let's be smart. The smarter we play, the better we are, the better we give our team a chance to be victorious. Thank you for checking out this episode of the Talk Dirty to Me podcast. Hopefully a little knowledge helped you a little bit. Hopefully you had a little fun in doing it. Tell me something you want to hear. You know I'm going to ask you. That's what we're going to do, right? Hit me up. Hey, what about this? What about Zone D? What about principles and whatever? If you think that I'm giving you something that's helping you out, as many of you have told me already, then let me really help you. Let me give you something and we can have a conversation about it. You don't have to agree with me. Let's just talk about it and let's see where we can move forward. And more importantly, have fun doing it, right? That's the whole point of this. Basketball is a fun game. No matter what we say, no matter how we act sometimes, it's supposed to be fun. Going to catch you around on the next time of Talk Dirty to Me. And please never, ever, ever let somebody from Disney say you owe them money.
I mean, I didn't realize we were starting right now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again for checking out the Talk Dirty to Me podcast with the Maestro. Drop a tag below and give us a piece of your mind.
So, see you next time and Talk Dirty to Me.